Unit 5.8, Scope and Access. So what we're going to look at is the scope of a variable, scope of a method, just scope in general, global, local scope. We're going to also look at this constructor passing data with the same name, and we're going to use the keyword this. We're also going to look at the balance, how it looks locally and globally, and then we're going to show some accessing of the instance variable through the getters and setters in the main. So that's basically what we're going to do. Just before we do that though, let's take a look at what we left off with last time. We were talking about static last time, and remember we talked about the static transaction count. And look at this. This is a static, okay, accessible in a non-static method. Non-static and static, accessible in a non-static method. But when we went to the static method, only static stuff we could access. So what we're going to look at now is scope. See, I went with the variables because I want to realize that all the blue variables, color-coded for a reason. Let's go all the way to the top. All these blue variables up here have what is called global scope. Let's write that down. Global scope. That means they are accessible within the class block, the entire block. So scope is basically where do you live within these curly braces. So you see how that open curly brace starts the class here, and then the last one at the very end stops it right here. That's the entire scope called global. So once a variable is inside these two curly braces but outside of the method or constructor, then it would be global. So when you see the color code as blue, you know it's global. The brown ones, these are local. These brown variables colored here, they only live within this scope. See, start here, ends here. So that scope is called a local scope. It's within the constructor. So it's through the methods, right? Stuff inside here, if you just declared a variable in here, it would be considered local to the get account number. Now we don't have any variables in there, so we're going to look down where we have variables. Let's look at the deposit. The amount is local. So I want to show something here. The first thing I want to show is how this balance here could actually be local and global. Ready? So let's say I had a double balance here. And this double balance is not the same as the balance up here. How so? They're different colors, first of all. But this is a global, accessible everywhere. But this one is local, only accessible inside the method. But look what just happened. When I declared this, it added, okay? It added to the local balance. Once this happens, though, the global balance will not update. The global balance will not update. So we have a scope problem here because this guy is going to be updated, true, but then once this method is over, this is no longer around. But the guy on the top, the blue balance, he would be around, okay? So let's look at the main method. Let's test that out. Let's try and run this. See? We got all our transactions here and everything that we saw. But let's just look at the A2, okay? So based on all of this, we deposited some money and we withdraw some money and so on. So this balance should be changing. But if we go back here and take a look here, the deposit will not occur. So let's go ahead and check that out. So let me do system.out.print. I'm going to do A2 dot get me a balance. Okay, let's run it. Balance is 0.0 because that 400 was added to the local balance but not the global one. So the question now is, how could we use the same name but referring to the different variables? Very easy. The word this. See, once you put the word this in front, it's going to refer to the global variable, the instance variable at top, the blue one. Okay, so this then, so if I run it now, this balance doesn't do anything. It's just there and it's not being used, right? And it's returning a 0, this balance. So I just want to put a this on this as well. Now you see a yellow line here that says, hey, this not being used. Correct, because I'm using the global balance, not the local balance. And that's one of the things that I wanted to show down here. I wanted to show how the balance could be used globally and locally. So yes, I could use the same name, but be very careful when you're trying to do that, because you got to figure out which balance you're speaking about. So one of the things that people do is they try not to mix these things up to avoid any type of error like this. But now if I go ahead and run this again, now the balance is 400. Because the value that I updated was the global scope and not the local. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So yes, at this point you should be saying, wait a minute. So you're telling me you could put this on all these things? Absolutely. Right? What about this transaction count? Get a little yellow line. Why? Because it's a static call. So this, what's this? Well, this is a self-reference. This is talking about this bank account, whichever one it is. So if I go over to the main and I create an A1, it'll be talking about this A1 bank account or this A2 bank account. Okay, so it's very specific to a particular object. But static stuff don't get called with instances. They get called with bank account. So I want to make sure we could see that and really process that. So it gets called with bank account. It doesn't matter where we are, that's the way we call it. It's a static call, right? So anytime we have a static call, that's the way we're going to call it. Remember, we did that with the print. Make the static call, we did the name of the class dot print right here. Same is true with the variable. Name of the class dot the variable. The other thing I wanted to show is that same this in the constructor. So let's go up. I'm just going to choose one just to show the example. You see this account here? This account, what if it was account number? What if this was actually account number? Then we would have a problem. Okay? We would have a problem. Let me take this out. Because what happens, you look at the color here and you see that the brown variable is being passed to the brown one. So if you look over here, it says, hey, this has no effect, because you're supposed to be passing to this guy up here, but you're passing to that guy. So how do I change this? Put a this. Easy as that. Now I'm passing the dummy to this bank account. Some people like to use the this no matter if this is the same name or not. It lets you know you're speaking about the instance variable. Okay, my account number. My is very individualistic here. So my balance. So if there are 3 different accounts, my balance, I might be $1,000. Somebody else might be $10,000. My balance, my last name. That's what the this is, a self-reference. So anytime you see a constructor where the names in here are the same as the instance variables, then you must write this on the left, okay, for the assignment. If this was balance, then obviously balance, you'll see this turn brown and this is still blue. I take this off and it turns brown. So I have to put the this back, okay? So now we have 2 ways that we could see. And again, every time you write something that refers to it, you could put this. You could put it here as well. Perfectly fine. This is this last name. Anytime you reference in self-referencing, you can use this. If you don't put it, The system will put it for you. And other thing we want to see, final thing we want to see, is the getters and the setters. So let's go to the main. And what we could see here is get transaction count. So the reason why we need this get transactions count, it's because over in the bank account, the transactions count is actually private. So I can't get this value over in another class. I made the getter who happens to be public. See, that's all about the scope here. If I want to see something accessible, I want to see it being get. So this is public, so that means I can get access to it. See what happens here now. Let me give this a bigger scope. If I made this public, okay, so transaction count is now public. If I come over here, I can say A1 dot transactions count. Now realize I'm calling the transactions count from inside the bank account because it's public, it's possible. Okay, if it goes private, so you can see it's possible here. If it goes private, then we're gonna get an error. We want to make sure we see that. See the error that's popped up there saying, hey, I don't know what this is. Well, two things was wrong with this. One, it was supposed to be private. We want to keep our data private, and if we turn it public, that's bad code. But even if I did it with public, let's go back and change it back to public. Even if I did public here, if I come over here and it doesn't give me an error, but it has a red line, why? Because this is static. So I can't call it that way. I have to call it this way. This is not good, okay? This is not the way we want to do it. We want to actually keep our data private, but this is just for illustration. So you could see how scope, how you can get access to things based on what scope you give. If it's private, if it's public, if it's possible to gain access to it, where does it live and stuff like that. Obviously, this is not the way. We want to actually call the getter. So A1 dot, not that, but get transaction count. And this is the right way to do it. So in essence, if you're outside of a class and you want to gain access to a variable that's private, you want to call the getter and the setter, okay? You don't want to try to access the variable just like that. Variables do have scope. So do methods, okay? This method here, right now it's a public method, so it's accessible anywhere outside. Another method may be private. Yeah, if a method is private, now we said getters and setters must be public, okay? But if I go ahead and make this private, let's call this private. If I go back to the main, you see a big error because, hey, I don't know what get balance is. It needs to be accessible, okay? So this thing is accessible by any instance of a bank account anywhere in your app, as opposed to how we did this one up here. We had to create the getter for it, and it's a static variable. We have these as well. They're all private, so we need their getters and setters as well. Scope, big topic. Got to be very careful as to how you can access things, where things are, how much scope we have, whether we're accessible all over, we're accessible in a certain spot. Very big deal in programming. This brings us to the end of 5.8.